Okay, now that you're done with the outline, make sure that you hide your layer with the rough draft and double check and make sure that you go over where your lines are. The reason being is because if there are stray lines that don't connect to something, then it'll be a little bit difficult to color him easily. So just make sure that all of the lines need to be connected wherever you're going to color certain areas. So I'm just going to go back over real quick and see if I missed any of the lines. So like for instance, if the hair was open like that, you'd want to close it because you don't want the color to leak out of it and go into the background or go into places that it shouldn't be in. Okay. And then I'm going to check his jacket. His shoulders. These lines are okay because it's within the actual armor. Okay. And these are connected, so that's going to be fine. This area is going to be covered up by the name, so it should be okay. And then, alright, I think everything's connected. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with coloring. So for coloring, make sure that your line work layer is always at the top, and then make a new, just normal layer underneath it. So you can click on your old layer and then hit the new layer. Go back up to your line work layer. Make sure that you're not on your new layer that you made. Head on up to your line work layer, and then you're going to select the wand tool, which is located next to the selection tool. And then click on the areas that you'd like to color. So for instance, I'm doing the skin for right now. And then, let's see, his neck is also skin tone. So then come back over, zoom in, and then you can use the cell pen, which is underneath the weight. And you can basically go in and make sure that there aren't any white areas that are in that area. The reason why it's blue right now is because that's the area that you've selected to color. It'll change into dotted lines after you're done using the select pen. Alright, and if for some reason you accidentally go out of the line, you can use a cell erase. Just make it super tiny and then you can erase that little area. Don't use the normal eraser though. Make sure it's cell erase and cell pen. There we go. Alright, and for the eyes, these are the whites of his eyes, so you can erase that with the cell erase. Whoops. And then make sure not to go too far out. There we go. And here we are. So that should be okay for now. The next step is to go down to your layer, your new layer, hit the bucket tool, and then go to a skin color. Mine is kind of in between the yellow and the orange, but it's whatever you prefer for skin tone. And then now that you're on your new layer, look in the areas that you want them to be colored. Make sure that you zoom into and cover all of the areas. So we have his ear, the little indent between his two hairlines. We have his face, and don't forget his neck too. Alright, and then go ahead and make a new layer and repeat the same process. So I'm making a new layer, hitting the line work layer using the wand tool, and I'm selecting his hair color. Okay, so now that the hair is all selected, go back to your new layer, which is underneath your skin layer, or should be. If it's not, then I highly recommend moving it. I'm going to open up his picture that I did previously just to get the hair colors down. If you're having trouble figuring out hair colors, I'd recommend just messing around with the tool and figure out. So mine's kind of in between the orange and the red. It's okay if it's not exactly like mine. So do whatever suits you or whatever you think is best. Now that we have the hair tool down, I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of it. So I'll meet you when you're done coloring. Alright, so it should be colored now. If you have any comments or concerns or need any help or anything, please leave a comment and let me know, and I'll do my best to help you out. I did forget one thing, which we can backtrack, so that's fine. Go back up to your line work layer and hit a new line work layer. Make sure that you're on the black color. You're probably going to, because the lines were, I think, at size 7, if I remember correctly, go down to size 4. What this does is make sure your stabilizer is on 0. What we're doing now is we're going to do hatching lines along underneath his chin. This just shows indication of shadow. So this is completely optional if you don't want to do that, or if you find that it's a little more difficult to do. That's totally fine. Just do whatever makes you comfortable. So yeah, and then even though it's colored and stuff, you can still erase the lines. Okay. And then if you need help, or if you need to, you can zoom in just to get a better view of it. I'm hitting Control E to bring the lines in. I'll actually switch to the eraser tool and just erase for right now. Alright, and there we go. I'm going to move that over. Bring that in a little more. Alright, so it should look something like this. And now we're going to start shading. So go to your skin tone layer. So it should be your first layer underneath your line work layers. You're going to make a new layer, not a new line work layer, but a new layer. And then go ahead and select clipping group. What that does is it's going to make whatever color you choose that you go over with. If you happen to accidentally go off to the side or something, so like for instance, if I were to see how the circle is off, you can still go, it only gets to the part that you colored on your skin tone layer. Okay. And so choose a darker skin tone. This is going to be where we're shading. If it's too dark, you can always change the opacity, like how I'm going to do. But for right now, just keep it as normal, and make sure that it's on clipping group and not preserve opacity. And so I'm just gonna start shading and going around. If you're having trouble on where to shade certain areas, you can either do what I'm doing, or it's also really good to either go outside and look around, or even just like browse for pictures on the internet and observe where the shadows are. I'm not perfect at shadows, but I do basically what my gut's telling me. So some of them are wrong, but I mean, it's fine. And eventually I'll learn the correct method. But for right now, if you're not sure, just follow your gut, or again, you can always do what I'm doing. Alright, and then I'm just gonna shade this in slightly, and then shade underneath his eyes. There we go. And then now underneath his neck too. Can't forget that. So right now it looks a little bit dark, but after I'm done shading, I'm going to change the opacity so that it looks lighter than what it looks like now. And then you can go ahead and go underneath, go right here, and right there. Here we are. Whoops. And if you happen to mess up, you can use the eraser tool if you need to. So there's no worries about messing up. Alright, almost there. Alright. Okay, so now I'm just getting the hair done, and then I'm going to color in his ear. Go ahead and tone the opacity down just slightly. You don't need it to be too light, but you also don't want it to be too dark. Next, go ahead and make another layer and then hit clipping group once again. Make sure it's above the shading layer that you just did. And then what this is going to do is it's going to give a little bit of a darker tone. So, but you can keep the same darkness or the same skin tone basically. So it's going to look like that. I'm going to actually make this a little bit lighter so that you can see the difference. If he looks a little bit pale like how he does now, don't worry, because we're going to basically give him a little bit more life when we do the overlay layer, which will be our next step. And then just shade key areas. You don't have to shade like the entire thing again, but it's just the parts that are supposed to be really dark. Alright, and then we're almost done. Okay, so now go ahead and hit new layer, clipping group again. This time, actually it's not an overlay layer, my bad. Just keep it on normal for the mode up here. Keep that on normal and then choose a red. So don't do, well, you could do dark red, or not too dark though, but keep it in like a brighter red. And then select the airbrush tool, and then for the density, bring it down a little bit. So maybe like around 35 to 40. What this is going to do is it's going to bring a little bit of life, and then you can maximize the size out. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to go across, and then go across again. Just whatever area you think needs a little bit of redness to it. Feel free to look at mine and try to mimic it if you need to. Alright, so I'm just going to leave it as that, and then I'm going to bring the opacity way down, so make it to like maybe around 30 to 40%. And then you can use the watercolor tool, make sure the density is pretty low, and then just go over it just to smooth it out a little bit for the color. There we go, that's nice and smooth. Alright, and then that should add some life into them, or a little bit more of life. The next thing that I like doing is the luminosity layer. What this does is it basically makes white even whiter and brighter. And then you can go in, hang on one second. Oh no, that's fine. Okay, you can zoom in and then make sure that it's super thin, and you're just going to catch the edge of certain key areas of your piece, of his skin. What this does is it basically like brightens up his face slightly. And that should be good for now. Yep, that should be fine. Actually, let me do, if you're uncertain of where to put the luminosity, you can just go with your gut. If you think it looks fine, then it looks fine. So, but yeah, it's basically just gives off a little bit of light. I'm gonna bring this down just slightly more. There, that should, actually, no, I'll bring it back up. There, that should be okay. Alright, so next we're gonna do the hair color. You're gonna do new layer, clipping group. Now, for the rest of his detail, I do, instead of having it normal, set to normal for the mode, you're gonna go to shade, and then instead of doing, like, because his hair is brown, instead of doing a darker brown, you're just gonna go grayscale and do very light. The reason being is because if you try to do that with a skin tone, it just looks gray and lifeless. But if you do it with any other color, it's kind of weird, but this will turn into a dark brown instead of it being gray. So you can mess around with that. The brush, I use the brush tool for this, and you don't want to go too dark. If you happen to go too dark, that's okay. You can change the opacity or just switch back to your color. So make sure you keep the same gray for the entire thing. Alright, and then you're just going to shade key areas once again. Alright, so now that the basic shading is done, go ahead and make a new layer, and you're going to set it to shade once more and do clipping group. Don't change the coloration or anything over here, just keep it the same. Go back in, and then you're going to do like how the skin is with the darker tone, just shade key areas of that. And I'll see you after I'm done. Alright, so now that all of the areas are shaded, the next thing is I'm going to introduce you to the overlay layer, which I mentioned before. So go ahead and hit new layer, clipping group, and then hit overlay. What this does is it basically helps with the coloration. I use the airbrush tool once again. So we're going to do the same thing like how we did to the skin with the red. Let me turn that up a little bit more. Okay, so you're just going to do a sweeping motion, go all the way down, and then, so it's right above the eyes, and then you can add some yellow in. Make sure that it's a light yellow, and then just do the top of his head. That should be fine. Next, go with the watercolor tool. Make sure the density is at around 30%, and then just lighten it up, blend it a little bit, just like that. And then you can do the same thing with the light color. And then after you're done with that, move the overlay layer down. So how to move it down is hold it and then drag it beneath your first shading layer. What that does is it's just gonna allow the shading to go over the top of it, and then bring the opacity down just a little bit. Just like that. That should be fine. If you need to go back over the yellow color just to that gives light, go for it. Then do the same thing. I'm gonna put some yellow over here too, actually. And there you go. Okay. So our next step is going up above the shading layer. You're gonna click new layer and then clipping group. Next we're going to use overlay once more. You're going to make the color completely white, and then you're going to use the airbrush tool again. Do a sweeping motion. This is going to be the highlight in his hair. And then you can hit the select tool to drag it around. Make sure it's on transform, and then press OK when you're done. Select the brush tool, keep it on white, and then just do lines on both sides. You can try to see if you can do it in a kind of an arcing motion, just so it kind of connects. And then you can make it wider on the ends if you'd like. Alright, and there you go. Next, we're going to do another clipping group, another normal layer. Go ahead and hit luminosity. This is the part where we're going to add little highlights on the edge of his hair. So go ahead and do that. And it can be in random places. I typically stick to the outside, just because it's easier for me rather than trying to go into the inside of it. There we go. And make sure that you try to get thin lines too. You can zoom in if that helps. Again, it takes a while for me to actually get it right. So if it takes you a while as well, that's perfectly fine. My accuracy is actually pretty low when it comes to doing this, so don't worry about that. If you need to, you can also use the lasso tool and then the select tool to move it over a little bit if you happen to make it a little too wide, like that. And then again, the top of the hair. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Oh, let me do right here as well, if I could get it right. Okay, I'm going to use the lasso tool, transform, and then move it in and turn it. There we go. That should be okay. Let me move it in a little bit more. Just slightly, and turn it. There we go. Let me actually move it out. The struggle is real. Okay, now that's fine. Alright, so our next step is to go down to the eyes. Now I did move the eyes up, but whichever order you put the eyes in, go down to them, and then I'll show you how to do the eyes. You can zoom in if you want, and then go ahead and make a new layer. Do clipping group once more, shade, and then go back to your previous gray. If you can't remember which gray you used, that's okay. Just do a light color, and then do a sweeping motion right next to the pupil, just like that. So what this is it's going to kind of be not necessarily the or you can do right below the pupil, that's fine. It's not the darker part of the eye, but it's like the middle color. And then go ahead and make a new layer, and then the same thing, so shade, clipping group, and then you're going to do this one right through the middle or through the upper part of the pupil, and then just go up like that. And then it should look something like this, and then make a new clipping group. This time we're going to do shade. You're going to take your airbrush tool, do kind of like a darker gray, and then just sweep through it just like that. You can take your watercolor tool, make it a little bit nicer looking. Next you're going to make a new layer and go to overlay. I like to use dark blue for more of a shade, so it's going to kind of turn almost black. but you can kind of tap it somewhat and then lighten it up with the opacity if you need to, and then head on over or click yellow, and then do the bottom of the eye just so it brightens it up a little bit. And I like to use yellow on the green eye and a really light icy blue on the blue eye. See how it gives it that light. And then from there you can even do another shade if you want, or if you need to. Make sure it's clipping group, and then you can add another layer just to give it more of that shadowy look, that darker color on both sides. There you go. The next thing, actually, go down to your first shade tool and then go around just to bring it in around the bottom. And then above the overlay tool, do another clipping group, but this time with luminosity. Make sure it's white. But there you go. So that way he's looking up here. At least it looks like he's looking up. Okay. So now that we have the eyes done. Oh wait, no, we don't have the eyes done. What am I talking about? Go to above the overlay layer, make it luminosity again. Zoom in, use the brush tool, and then you're going to do a little dot at the bottom. I know it looks weird, but turn the opacity down just like that, and then it should look fine. That's kind of gives more light to the eyes too. If you have Manga Studio 5, I'd recommend starting it up and opening a file. If not, go ahead and try to find a font website that will let you type in a name and copy it to your computer. Make sure that it's an PNG file. That way it's transparent and stuff. Alright, so now I'm going to switch over to Manga Studio. Whoops. Alright, so now we're on Manga Studio. I'm going to go over to the right and hit New Raster Layer at the bottom. This is going to bring up a new layer, and then over at the bottom left there's a text option. Go ahead and use that. Make sure that your text is on black. Let me zoom in for you so you can see. Now we're going to, I like to use, where is it, Segoe Print. It acts kind of like bubble letters to me, so I really like it. And then I'm going to type in private and then underneath Fearless. Just because if I were to type it all in for one name, it'd be kind of long, so that's why I'm doing it as 2 words. And then I'm going to hit the center align just so it looks better. The next thing that I'll do is I'll use the selection tool, which is the dotted rectangle. Highlight that, hit Control C to copy it. Go ahead and minimize Manga Studio and head on back to Paint Tool SAI. Alright, and so scroll all the way up to your first line work layer and then hit Control V, and what this will do is it will bring in the name, and then you can use the selection tool to drag it down. You might have to make it so that the words are closer together. It's okay if that it's in black for right now. because we'll change the color of it. Okay, use the selection tool and drag Fearless up next to Private. Alright, so it should look something like this. And now what I'll do is use the Preserve Opacity, which is right above Clipping Group. What this is going to do is it basically locks the letters so that you can change their color to whichever color you'd like. I'm gonna go with a blue color, I think. I think it'll look good with his shoulders and stuff, and it also would look good with his eye. Alright. So use your pencil tool and then you can bring it up to whichever size you want. I like using the bigger size and just go over it, make sure to fill in all of it. Okay, so now you can leave that on opacity if you want, it doesn't matter, but go ahead and make another line work layer right underneath that normal layer that the words are in. Manga Studio, to my knowledge, I'm still completely new to it, but it doesn't let you outline the words. So we have to go back in and use the pen tool and do an outline ourselves. So make sure your line work layer is underneath PrivateFearless, and then just go over and do the outline. And I'll see you after it's done. Alright, so now that you're finished with the outline, go ahead and head back up to your Preserve Opacity layer with the letters or with the name on it. Pick a different color that you want. I actually changed it to more of a teal color. And then, so this is going to be on the bottom, so as you can see what it's going to do, it's going to give it kind of like a, not a shadow, but I guess it's kind of like a shadow. It just gives more to the drawing or to the words, and then you can do a light color too if you want, just so it looks kind of cool, just like that. Alright, and I actually forgot to shade the eyes, so I'll go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so here we go. There's PrivateFearless, and the next thing we're going to do is going to head back over to Manga Studio. At this point, we are going to pick out the background that we want, just to see what we have. Let me get rid of that. So there's actually a tool, a decorations tool. It has different effects, hatching lines, it has flowers, different patterns. You can basically go around and see what you like or what you want it to be, just like mess around with it. So like you could have snowflakes. I think I might go with some of the sparkles. I think I like that. I think that's a good little design. So I'm gonna hit Control C after I've selected it, then head back over to Paint Tool SAI. Scroll all the way to the very bottom, right above your rough draft layer. Hit New, or then hit Control V, and then it's going to bring your sparkles in, and you can take them and then put them around him. You can change the size. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment or subscribe. Comment below what you want me to draw next or what you want me to teach you next. I'd be happy to help you out. If you have any questions on how to use the two programs that I use during this video, please let me know, and go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I'll put my information in the description. Also, if you have followed along with the Private Fearless drawing, go tag me in it. I'd really love to see your artwork. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.